Hi, my name is Ella Graham, and I'm a sophomore this year at Vanguard. I'm a business major with a concentration in data analytics, and I'm this year's Mixed Club president. In my free time, I like to read, watch movies, go out with friends, and this is my story. So November is the month of Native American Heritage Month, so as Mixed Club president, I am in charge of running all the events that we're doing for this semester. So for me, growing up, I always had a decent relationship with God. You know, I went to church and I enjoyed it, but I wasn't as invested as I probably should have been. You know, I didn't talk with him as often as I should have, but I knew he was there, and I knew he was there for me, and that was enough at the time, which is why I was glad to come to Vanguard, because I knew it would be a place where I would be surrounded with others who could help me hone in and focus and fine-tune my relationship with God. And it's definitely helped. Even in times when I've forgotten to talk with him and really appreciate him, he's shown me signs that he's there. He'll click things into place for me, and I'll see oh, he's there and he's working and he's doing things for me. He's worked for me by little things. I would have been late for setting up for an event had he not given my teacher tech problems and made him want to end class early. Or this event that's happening soon that's being celebrated by Native Americans that my VP found that we're gonna go, and it's gonna give us a lot of materials and things we'll need to really improve this month. And so seeing him work in these little ways, it reminds me that he's there. A large part of why I joined ISP is because I wanted to create community, and I wanted to provide spaces that would give students on campus a place where they could feel respected and have a chance to be open about their experiences. Which is why I'm really glad that I'm in charge of Native American Heritage Month, because it's a culture I don't know much about. And so I'm being challenged to learn more about it, and I'm a perfectionist, so I want to honor it as best as I can. Something I've struggled with a lot here has been comparison. I feel that I should be further along in my relationship with God than I have been, because everyone here is so on fire for God, and I worry that if I'm not as on fire for God, that I'm not doing enough. Last semester, when I took therapy, I did bring a bit of this up to my therapist. She pointed out we're all on our own walks with God, really. I love Jesus, and being here at Vanguard really helps me get on fire for him, but when we go home, I always falter a little because I'm surrounded by friends from high school who aren't as on fire for God or don't even know him at all. And since COVID, my family likes doing chapel from home because they can do it from their bed, which is fair. But it's not the same. I want to do better. Another struggle I've had is with validation. I typically search for validation through academics, with good grades, which is in part because of my perfectionism, or at least that helps with the validation, and through validation from my parents or other relationships and things like that, and it really doesn't work. I've been learning that the only person we can and should rely on is God. He's there all of the time. He continues working for us throughout our life. In my Old Testament class, I've learned that God has two hands, his right hand, which is the blessing hand, and his left hand. And his left hand is the one I've been particularly interested in because I've always been worried about being off of God's path for me, because I can never really know if I am on his path or not. And my professor said that God uses his left hand to redirect us back to where we're supposed to be with God. And I found a lot of comfort in that, knowing that, like, even though I may not be doing exactly what he wanted for me, like, since I am pursuing him, his hand's gonna have it a little easier, like, getting me back on track. And all the signs I see around of things falling into place together just shows me that I am getting closer to the right track. Growing up and seeing my parents' relationships with God was interesting because I would see my mom and she, you know, loves Jesus, loves going to church because that's how she was raised, and my dad just he was raised, like, both of my parents believe in God, but they believe in him in different ways. My mom's Catholic and my dad, I think, is Presbyterian, but either way he's not as, like, on fire for God or whatever. And so while I've been trying to be more like my mom in my faith, I have picked up a lot of my father's traits with, like, my personality, and, like, growing up, just I wasn't as on fire for God. They say, like, if your dad doesn't go to church, that, like, the rest of the family, like, won't go. It's just, or at least that's what my mom has always said. So, like, even though she always pushed us, unless my dad went, we wouldn't go, I guess, which was kind of not great on my part. There are a lot of things I've done, like, as a kid that I was like, I should have put more focus here, or I should have put more focus there. Like, for the reasons with my sibling, my mom couldn't speak Spanish to us growing up. So I grew up only knowing English and then taking, like, high school Spanish. So while, like, I know, like, the basics of Spanish, it's, like, really hard for me to talk to my grandma, because her first language is Spanish, and so I mostly just heard, like, broken English from her, because even though she was supposed to talk to me in Spanish, she didn't. And so a typical thing for, like, mixed kids, when you don't know, like, the language of one of your cultures, it makes you feel a little bit less than, and it's something I've been working on since I know, like, bits and pieces and can, like, understand, like, when I hear it, I know that I'm, like, getting closer to being, like, bilingual. I wish I had, like, worked more on, like, learning Spanish growing up, and, like, maybe starting learning earlier, or trying to talk with my grandma in Spanish more, because now I'm at college and farther away from my grandma, so I can't just, like, walk over to her house and talk to her for a little bit and have her just speak to me in Spanish. Maybe, you know, it's a bit more difficult. I'd have to call now, and then that's a little more complicated, but at the same time I also need to call my family more, but I feel like everybody does. Growing up, I kept trying to, it was weird. when I was little, I was upset with like certain attributes that I got and wished I had gotten others. I wish I had gotten my dad's green eyes and his blonde hair. Even though like I got his like fine hair and like facial features, I just didn't get the facial features I had wanted, I guess. And I don't know why I had wanted those things. And I'm happy with how I look now, which is good. But you know, there were things I wanted, and I feel like if I had known God a little bit better at that time, these things that I would have struggled with might have not been as difficult. Like throughout high school, throughout all of school, really, I just struggled with friends. Kept looking for that like one best friend, and every time I like got close, we'd be separated by either like school or just the different paths that we happened to be going on, and it sucked because I'd be like, where's my person? I want that person. Like in Grey's Anatomy, you have like Christina and Meredith, and they're like to each other like, you're my person, and I was like looking for that, and it was hard. And I know now that if I had put more focus in God, like God is your person. He's always there, and you can trust that he's gonna be there for you, and he's gonna listen to you, and you can listen to him, and he'll put people in your life that will fulfill what you need. Going back to my mom. I grew up very kind of reserved in our faith. Like, we all love Jesus, but we're a bit like more closed up and private about it. Like, we never felt the need to like proclaim it, and in our churches, like, we only like raised our arms during like the designated moments and stuff. And so coming here and seeing people raising their arms up during Shine, or being moved to tears by the Holy Spirit, it was a big change for me. And so I felt really behind on my journey. I was like, oh my gosh, like, I'm watching all my friends having these like come to Jesus moments, and I just wasn't feeling what I felt like I should be feeling. Like, they're all able to hear God, his message, like, so clearly to their ears, and I'm just sitting there and I'm like, okay, where's mine? Like, I don't hear anything. And I found recently that my mind would wander too much. And I think it's because I'm used to seeing like Jesus up at like the front of like a church or a chapel, and it's something for me to like focus on. And without it, I've been like letting my mind wander too much. But just last week I was able to like close my eyes and like really focus on him, and it was like the most I've like ever extended like my arms during like worship, and like I could almost like feel him there. It was really amazing because I hadn't like experienced that in a while. I just happened to be lucky that night because I had like caffeine or something in my system and I wasn't tired. I'm always scared to close my eyes during chapel because I'm like, oh no, what if they think I'm sleeping? I'm not sleeping, I'm just trying to focus. You know, I'm trying to get in tune with Jesus. And so that night I knew when you like know the words to the worship, it just also helps, because then you're like, oh, I can sing along. They'll see that I'm like in it and I'm like giving it my all. Like last semester I started going to Rise with my roommates, and it did like wonders for my relationship with God. I, was getting more into the Word and just getting more in touch with Him. I made the most progress with like God that semester than I like had that whole year. So my story might not be one you hear a lot, but it's my story and it's mine and it's important to me. And it's my story.